Hello and welcome to Dad Got This, where we answer the tough questions like, what kind of knives do you need? How do you take care of them? And why did the knife get kicked out of school? That one's easy. It was always cutting class. I posted a question on my community board asking what kind of videos you guys wanted to see, and this one was a request by Jim Bassett. Jim asked, give me a little bit of information on knife care. So I figured I'd go a little bit further than what Jim asked for and go for what kind of knives you want and need, and how do you take care of them. Now, I have a lot of knife and knife paraphernalia. I like knives. I like cooking, so I've amassed quite a few knives. I also run a cooking channel, so people send me knives to try out. But the question is, do you need all of this? And the answer is
no.
Really, you just need one knife. If you are going to get one knife, get a chef knife. Something 7 to 8 inches long.
That's what she said.
This is my chef knife. I absolutely love this knife. This is a Shun Ken Onion Damascus chef knife. I bought this back in like 2011 for $160. Now, they go for quite a bit more online. It's kind of a prized knife. I just bought it because it looked really cool and I thought it'd be a good knife. Guess I had good taste. The reason you just need a chef knife is because you can do just about everything with a chef knife. You can slice, you can dice, you can chop, you can mince, you can butcher meats, you could do fine work, you could do just about anything you need to do in the kitchen with a good chef knife. You don't need to spend $160 on a chef knife though. There are lots of chef knives out there for a pretty good price. I'll throw a link to a couple ones that I think are pretty good down below. 30, 40 bucks, you can get a pretty fantastic knife. If you are just a home cook and you are not into barbecue, this is 100% really all you need. This will get you through. Chef knives are great because they just have great balance. They fit your hand well. You can rock them because of the curved blades. They rock really well for that kind of slicing and chopping. They're just great. They're really a fantastic knife. Now, if you're into barbecue and you're doing a lot of your own home butchery, it doesn't hurt to pick up one of these. This is a fillet knife. You can see it has a much thinner blade. It's more tapered. You see it's got some flex to it. This is great for carving up meat. If you are butchering a rack of ribs and you're trimming stuff off, or maybe doing a brisket and you want to trim your brisket, could you do it with this?
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Yes, 100%. Is it easier with this? Yeah, definitely. This is a pretty inexpensive fillet knife that I got off of Amazon. I really like it. I think it was on the Bearded Butcher's channel. They used a knife like this and recommended it, and it's done very, very well for me. I've trimmed a lot of stuff with this and not really ever had to sharpen it yet. I've had it for at least a year or two and a couple sharpens and a little tune-ups, and it's great. I will also throw a link down to that knife in the description below. So that's really it. That's all you honestly need is a good chef knife and a fillet knife, and you're gonna do just about everything you need to do in the kitchen. So you might be asking, what are all those and why do you have them?
I need knives. I need more knives.
The more you do stuff, the more specialized cooking you do, the more it does help to have specialized knives. This is a paring knife.
That's not a knife.
These are little tiny knives good for doing delicate work. Fruits, stuff like that, like you're pitting something, you're doing something really delicate, these are great to have. But you can get away without having one. I love this one. This one's also a Shun knife. I got it to match my other knife, but you don't really need it. Brisket carver. This is great for chopping up big roast beefs or briskets and stuff like that. Makes things a little easier. Totally do it with a chef knife. Serrated knife. Great for carving breads. Sometimes meats works better with the serrated knife because it cuts through barks. If you cut a lot of breads and such at home, getting a serrated knife is worth the investment. But you could probably do it with a chef knife if you needed to.
If you say so.
This sucker is called a Serbian chef knife. It's kind of a mix between a chef knife and a cleaver. I don't own a cleaver, so I own this. This is my chopping knife. This is if I need to hack through something and really get through something. This thing's got some weight, and it still works as kind of a regular chef knife. I can still rock with it, and I can still do regular work with it. I kind of actually really like this knife. Now that we kind of know what knives we need and what knives we don't need and what knives we might want, let's get on to the actual question that Mr. Bassett asked us. How do we care for our knives properly? Well, the very first rule of knife care is
you do not talk about Fight Club.
Absolutely never, ever, ever put your knives in the dishwasher. It will dull them. The heat, the way they work, it is not good for a knife. The edge on a knife is kind of a delicate thing, and a dishwasher is not a delicate thing. So just do yourself a favor, never put any knives in the dishwasher. It can ruin the handles. The extreme heat can actually even loosen how the handle is attached to the blade. It's just not good. The next thing is something you want to absolutely do versus what you absolutely not want to do with the dishwasher. Wash your knives as soon as you are done using them. Leaving food, especially acidic foods, can eat away at the finish of the knife. This part up here and the actual blade portion, the sharp part, the bevel of the knife, gets eaten away, and it's gonna dull your knife faster if you just let your knives sit for a long time after you use them and don't give them a good wash. After you wash your knives, dry them immediately. Do not leave them out to air dry. Same deal here. That water sitting on there can leave water spots. It can dull the finish. It can dull the knife. All you need to clean a knife is a good soft bristle brush. Bristle brush? Bristle brush. Are you a bristle brush? It's a bristle brush.
Speak English, huh?
Bristle brush and some dish detergent. Little soapy water, maybe a little bit of heat to it. Scrub the blade, scrub the handle, rinse it off, dry it with a nice towel. That's it. Super easy to take care of knives. Now that your knives are nice and clean, what do you do with them? Please, for the love of everything that is holy, do not store your knives in a drawer, just loose, clanging around.
Duh.
That is A, dangerous, because when you go in there to reach for your knife, your sharp knife might cut you.
I cut off a finger.
And B, it is going to mess up the blade. Think about a metal piece banging against other metal pieces. Every time you open and close that drawer, you're gonna mess up the knife. Chips in the edge, it is just not going to be a good thing. So please, don't store your knives in a drawer just loose. My suggestion is to get something like this, a good knife block. This stores all my steak knives, which are, my household cutting knives, steak and, food knives. So I got a set of little food knives in there. I've got all my other knives in here, except for this one. This one came with its own fancy stand, so I store it in its fancy stand. And then it's also got room for a honing steel. We'll get into this in a minute. These aren't that expensive. You can grab them on Amazon. They're a great way to store knives. The second way you could store them would be to do like a magnetic thing on your back cabinet. I like those. Those are kind of cool. You just do have to be careful when you pull them on and off. If you pull them in a wrong way and the knife hits against the metal piece, you could scratch it or whatnot. Not a big deal, but it's another way to store knives. Now, there's all kinds of knives, these nice wood block ones. There's ones that have little, like, wood dowels that you put the knives through. Any of those I think would be fine, but just don't store them loose in a drawer, please. The next thing is to use a proper cutting board. I went over this in my video where I reviewed these cutting boards from Sonder LA. I was informed on proper cutting boards. I used to use a bamboo cutting board. I actually recommended that bamboo cutting board.
I'm sorry.
Is it bad? Will it destroy your knives? No. But it is harder. It is going to dull your knife faster, which is going to make you need to sharpen your knife more often, which is going to make your knife last not as long. Get yourself a good soft wood cutting board. Wood cutting boards seem to be the best. They're naturally hygienic if you get a good one. They've got the right density. They don't hurt the knives. They're easy to clean. They're pretty easy to maintain. If you want to know more about cutting boards, I'll link down to my video I did on these cutting boards. There's a lot of good information on there on cutting boards. But just speaking of sharp, a sharp knife is safer than a dull knife. Most people kind of might think that sounds counterintuitive. A sharp knife's going to cut you worse than a dull knife would cut you. A dull knife will cut and tear, and a sharp knife will make just like a nice clean cut, and it's a little bit better for you. But you never want to get cut. And the reason you don't want to have a dull knife is that dull knives tend to slip and cause issues. So if you're cutting something and it's just not sharp enough and it's not going through, the knife slips like that, and now you've cut yourself.
So much blood!
That's the most common way people cut themselves with knives. A sharp knife is just gonna glide through things, it's gonna go better, everything's gonna work better, and you're less likely to cut yourself if you have a sharp knife. Speaking of sharp knives, how do you maintain a sharp knife? Let's say your knife is a little dull. Most people think that using one of these is how you sharpen a knife.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
So, most people see that chef motion you see on TV where people are going. They think that that's sharpening the knife. That is not sharpening a knife. That is honing a knife. This is a honing rod. This is to straighten the blade of the knife. Okay, the way knives work is there's what's called a bevel. Think of it as a point. So on this knife, this side is tapered into this way, and this side is tapered into this way, and they meet at a point. That makes a bevel all the way along the edge. The better that bevel, the cleaner and straighter it is, the better this knife is going to cut and the sharper it's going to be. Now, after time and after use, that bevel and that line gets kind of out of whack. It gets kind of wavy and not so straight. So this is to straighten that line. So the easiest way to do that is take your point like this, take your knife like this, and just run it like that. And all you're doing is straightening that line. Now, there are some great chefs who know the exact angle and everything, and they can kind of do this one. If you're pretty good at it, you can do it this way. That's harder to do when you're learning. Put it down, go like this, and just follow the angle and pull it towards you. That way, if you hit the board, you're not hurting the knife. That's it. Using this every once in a while is fine. If your knife is nice and sharp, you won't have to use this that often. But every once in a while, you give it what's called a tune-up, and it's gonna keep your knife nice and sharp. How do you know your knife's sharp? Most professional knife sharpers like to use telephone book paper or newspaper, but that's really hard to come by. So I just have some printer paper. A quick way to tell if your knife is sharp is just to grab it, hold a piece of paper, and see if it can do that. If it can just slice right through a piece of paper, this is a little bit thick of a paper, so it's a little harder to get through, but if you can do that, your knife is pretty sharp. Now, as you can see, this guy teared a little bit. That means this knife is actually probably getting close to needing to be sharpened. See? I said this guy I used to hack a lot, so it dulls the blade quite a bit. This has not been sharpened in a while. This needs to be sharpened. So you can see the difference. Tore the paper, pretty much cut the paper, sliced the paper like it was nothing. That piece of paper will show you how sharp your knife is. What's the best way to sharpen a knife? For most people who are just getting into things and don't have crazy expensive knives, this is probably the best thing you can use to sharpen your knife at home. It's an electric knife sharpener. It's almost foolproof. It is a little more aggressive than doing some of the other methods, but it'll get the job done, it'll do it well, and if you don't have crazy expensive knives, it's perfect. Let's sharpen this knife as an example. On this sharpener, there are two different angles. There is a 15-degree angle and a 20-degree angle. That's because there are kind of two kinds of knives. There's Asian knives, and then there's Western knives. The Asian knives are sharpened at a 15-degree angle in general. They're made from a little bit like better metal. They can take the bevel a little better. The 15-degree angle is sharper. It's like why sushi knives and everything cut so well. However, it's less durable than the 20-degree angle because it's thinner. The Western knives use the 20-degree angle. The Asian knives use the 15. Since this is like a chopper and whatnot, I do this one at the 20. And all you do is take your knife and run it right through there. Now, I'm not sure if it goes in a direction or not, but I always do it in this direction. So I run my knife here. And as you can see, I'm pushing the knife so it's flat against this side here. That's what makes sure you keep the angle. So push it against the outside and just run it across. Always try to do the same amount of passes on both sides. So I think that was like 6. We'll do the same over here. Now I'm not putting down a lot of pressure. I'm just kind of letting the knife glide through. Now once you've done that, you've got to hone the blade. This has like a little honer on the side here, or you can use your steel. So if we use theirs, you just basically are doing the same thing. And that should be it. This should be sharper than it was before. Same exact kind of paper. Nice and sharp. And that's it. This will stay sharp for quite a while. If I need to, I can always just take this guy out, hone him up if he gets dull. And once this stops working, then you do this. Don't use this too often. The more you do this, you're actually grinding away metal from your blade. That's gonna make your knife not last as long. So only move to this step when this step stops working. Now this knife is also a different kind of knife that needs different care than every other knife that I have. This is made of raw steel. This knife will actually rust every once in a while, but it's just surface rust. To get rid of that and to maintain the blade, you need to treat it with food grade mineral oil. Just like you treat your wood grain boards with this, you treat this knife with it. So after it's done being washed every once in a while, you just hit a little bit of the oil, let it dry, and this knife will be good to go. It's just because of the type of steel in this blade. It's a different kind of blade than the other knives. Now, this knife, I would never use on this.
Nope.
It's just too nice a knife. It's not worth me potentially grinding off too much metal, so I don't sharpen this knife on there. This knife, I sharpen one of these, a whetstone. Now this is a sharpened ceramic whetstone. This is a little bit different than some of the other whetstones that you might find, like this one, where you need to soak the whetstone completely for like 10-15 minutes to really let it get the water in there before you can sharpen. This ceramic whetstone, you can just pour some water on it and go to town. Now, whetstone sharpening is an art. I'm not even that good at it.
No. Really?
I can get it done, but I'm not great at it. If you want to watch some great whetstone sharpening videos, I'll link down to a couple of people that helped me learn how to use this and why I bought this specific one. This is a great all-arounder. This, you don't need to do multiple steps most of the time. With this one, you can kind of just get away with using this one stage and get a pretty good edge on your knives without having to do multiple stages. Most of the times you start off at a heavier grit and then go down to a finer grit to do your finishing. This one, you can kind of get away with just one stage. This one's also nice because it comes with like a little holder. So that way when you go like this, you can put it here and it holds it in place for you. One of the hardest things about sharpening with a whetstone is getting your angle correct. You actually have to hold the knife at the proper angle to create that bevel. It's really hard to do if you don't know what you're doing. They sell these little guides. They're great. They basically snap onto the end of your knife like that. They just slide right on. And now my knife is sitting at exactly 15 degrees every time. I don't mess it up. Until I build that muscle memory and I know what 15 degrees is, I use this guide. The basics of whetstone sharpening is you put a little water down, you take your knife and you slide it back and forth and grind off the metal, just like what this one's doing. And then you turn it and you'll do the same thing, couple passes. There's a bunch of different techniques, whether you slide and pull or Some people go like this. There's a whole lot involved in whetstone sharpening, but this will get any knife sharp. Guaranteed. If you know what you're doing, you can sharpen a butter knife and make it blade sharp. It's amazing what you can do with a whetstone. So I hope that answers some of your questions about knives and knife care. If you guys are enjoying this content and you like this kind of stuff, let me know in the comments what you want to talk about next. Also, do the likey, subscribe stuff. YouTube loves it when you give it the thumbs up. That's great. I also answered just about every comment in my comment section, so go ahead and leave me a comment and we'll have a discussion. If you really want to support this channel, consider becoming a member. Members get 24-hour early access to videos. They get shout outs. If you become a certain level of member, you'll even get a Christmas card or holiday card from me, whatever holiday you celebrate. All kinds of fun stuff, and it really helps support this channel. I really appreciate each and every one of you who is a member. So I guess that only leaves one question to answer. Why did all the knives get fired? They weren't cutting it anymore. That's pretty bad, yeah. Dad may tell horrible knife jokes, give you some pretty good information on knives, but there is one thing Dad will never do, and that's an outro. So that's it. Bye.
This episode of Dad Got This was brought to you by our producers. Thank you very much.
First, just so we get a look.